Win without showing the war. True victory doesn't need to shout. Let me paint a picture for you. Someone walks into the room, they don't say a word, they're not trying to impress anyone, no medals, no titles, no need for attention. But the room gets quiet. You feel something in the air, a grounded, powerful presence. You notice them not because they're loud, but because they don't need to be. I've met people like that over the years, leaders, athletes, even patients who've survived the darkest seasons of their lives. They didn't need to tell you what they'd been through. They didn't scream to prove their strength, because sometimes silence is the loudest voice in the room. Have you ever felt like you had to speak up just to prove your worth, to show you're not weak, to remind people you matter? Maybe you've reacted to a harsh word, fought to defend yourself in a room full of doubt, only to feel empty afterwards. I get it. I've been there. But life and the wounds we carry have taught me something. Not every battle needs to be fought in public. Strength doesn't have to roar. One of my longtime friends, a retired military surgeon, once told me after a tense operation, the loudest person in the room is usually the one least in control. And I've seen that hold true not just in operating rooms, but in meetings, relationships, and everyday life. Real strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need a stage. It speaks through presence, through quiet consistency, through how you carry yourself. Think of a river. It doesn't make noise to prove its power, but it shapes stone. It carves landscapes. It sustains life without a single word. Stillness isn't weakness, it's strategy. I once worked with a single mother who had survived a decade of physical and emotional abuse. She didn't retaliate. She didn't blast him on social media. She didn't look for pity. She quietly took her child to school, went to trade classes at night, and 3 years later, she opened a centre for women escaping domestic violence. She won, but no one saw her fight because the real battle was internal. And that's what most people don't understand. Your silence doesn't mean you're not fighting. It means you're fighting with focus. Neuroscience backs this up too. When we stay calm, when we don't react impulsively, our brains operate from the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reason and strategy. But when we get triggered, we drop into survival mode. Adrenaline spikes, emotions flare, and we make decisions out of fear, anger, or ego. And in today's world, the more reactive you are, the easier you are to control. Win without anyone knowing you are at war. I had a student, an immigrant. When he first came to the US, he didn't speak English, no network, low-wage labour job, but he had a dream to build his own coffee brand. No one saw the nights he studied finance. No one saw him save every dollar. No one saw him waking up at 4 a.m. to practice making the perfect cup. The day he opened his cafe, there were no banners, no launch party. But 6 months later, it became the local favourite. Not because of marketing, but because of the vibe, the quality, and the care. He won. And no one even knew he was in the ring. Sometimes, silence is how you protect your peace. I know there are days you want to scream, to prove something, to fight back. But let me tell you something real. You don't need to respond to every insult. You don't need to argue to be seen. You don't need to perform to feel validated. You just need to keep building in silence, with purpose, with that quiet fire inside that knows you're creating something lasting. Because true victory isn't when you silence others, it's when you no longer need their noise to feel complete. And if someone's hurt you, doubted you, tried to pull you down, let your growth be the answer. Let your peace be the response. Let your quiet consistency be the proof that you didn't break. You built something greater. So if you're in the middle of a silent battle right now, don't worry if no one sees you. Don't panic if no one's cheering. Because the real winners don't need an audience. You're building an empire in silence. You're writing a legacy through action. And when the time comes, you won't need to announce it. The world will feel it. Be unpredictable. Become the person no one can pin down. Have you ever felt programmed. Like people already know exactly how you'll react. They know you'll get defensive when criticized. They know you'll stay quiet when dismissed. They know no matter how much they hurt you, you'll eventually come back. And because they know that, they stop respecting you. Not because you're not worthy, but because you've become too easy to predict. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying it to wake something up inside you. Because when people can anticipate your every move, they don't need to control you with threats or pressure. All they need is your pattern. Once they've mapped it, they can control your emotions, your reactions, even your life choices. A woman I once met, she was a nurse, kind-hearted, always putting others first. Her husband was an alcoholic, and for years he repeated the same cycle. Apologise, come back, relapse. And she forgave him every single time. I asked her, what do you think happens when he knows no matter what, he'll always be forgiven? She went silent. Then she cried. Sometimes forgiveness stops being compassion and starts becoming a pattern people exploit. The moment you step out of your pattern, you take your power back. They expect you to get mad smile. They assume you'll stay walk away. They wait for you to explain yourself. Stay silent. I'm not asking you to be cold or calculating. I'm inviting you to be free. Free from the old operating system, your past and your pain installed. Here's what behavioural science tells us. The human brain craves predictability. When it sees a familiar pattern, it reacts automatically. No thought required. So, if you keep showing up the same way, you're making it easy for people to predict you and control you. But when you start changing intentionally, consciously, people pause. They think twice. They tread more carefully. I have a friend who runs a company. He told me every time there's a crisis, I don't rush into meetings like I used to. I don't scold. I don't react. I go for a walk. I laughed. A walk? He smiled. Yeah, I walk through the office. I listen. I feel the energy. I observe. Then I come back not to react, but to decide. And because they don't know what I'm thinking, they start adjusting themselves. You see, people fear what they don't understand. They respect what they can't predict. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to stop being the version of you that everyone already knows. Have you ever lived to please others? Have you shaped your behaviour around what they expect? If so, maybe today is the day to break that script. Not to rebel, but to create more space for your authentic self. They expect you to ask a question instead. They expect you to return, keep walking. They think your value has run out. Let your results surprise them. Being unpredictable is not recklessness, it's strategy. A general never reveals the entire battle plan. A wise teacher doesn't give every answer. And a deep soul always holds something sacred unspoken within. That can be you too. If you give yourself permission to outgrow the old pattern. I know change isn't easy. You'll feel strange at first, maybe even lonely. Some people will say, you've changed. And they're right. You have. You don't react the way you used to. You're no longer emotionally programmable. You've stopped playing by rules written by other people. You're rewriting yourself. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop being predictable, you become the freest person in the room. No one can trap you. No one can pull your strings. You become a question mark they can't solve, a landscape they've never explored. And that's power. If you've read this far, I already know something about you. You've got a quiet warrior inside you, patient, resilient, waiting for the right moment to rise. So, let today be that moment. Live like someone no one can predict. Think like someone no one can corner. Move like someone who's done with being controlled. Not to play games, but to finally fully own the game. Control your emotions before they control you. There's one thing I know for sure. If you can't control your emotions, you won't be able to control your life. I've seen it again and again in boardrooms, in marriages, in moments of crisis. and even in the small quiet cracks of everyday life. Have you ever felt this? Someone says something careless and suddenly you explode. Someone dismisses you and it feels like the whole world is against you. One text message and your whole day is ruined. You can't eat. You can't sleep. I've been there too. Maybe we've all been victims of our emotions at some point. But I want you to imagine something for a second. Picture yourself driving through a storm. Rain pounding the windshield. The wipers can't keep up. You're freezing. Your hands are shaking on the wheel. But instead of calming yourself, you panic. You hit the gas. You swerve. And in that moment, you lose control. That's what emotions do to us. They can be the storm, the rain, the thunder, the chaos. But you are still the one holding the wheel. A man I once coached, he was a successful entrepreneur, respected, sharp, but he had a pattern. Every time an employee made a mistake, he exploded. Not because the mistake was serious, but because deep down he was afraid. Afraid of losing control, afraid of being disrespected, afraid of being seen as weak. I asked him, are you really angry at them, or are you angry at yourself for feeling helpless? Oh. He was silent for a long time, then he nodded. You see, anger, jealousy, fear, they don't come from the outside. They come from within, from wounds that haven't healed. What does science say about emotions? Your emotions show up before logic does. When someone provokes you, your brain immediately activates the amygdala, the emotional center. It doesn't ask, is this fair? It only asks, is this a threat? That's why unless you train yourself to pause before reacting, your emotions will run the show. But here's the truth. You have a choice. You can learn to pause, to breathe before you speak, to observe before you act, to think before you react. And when you do that, you stop being a puppet to your emotions. You become a true leader from the inside out. A woman I once interviewed, she was in her 60s, divorced after 35 years of marriage. I asked her, if you could go back in time, what would you do differently? She smiled gently and said, I wouldn't argue when I was angry. I asked, because you didn't want to hurt him. She shook her head. No, because when I was angry, I wasn't myself. I was my pain. And isn't that the truth? So many of our regrets, they come from moments when we reacted too fast. We said things we didn't mean. We broke relationships that didn't deserve to break. We made decisions we later wished we could take back. But sadly, there's no undo button for emotions. Controlling your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. You still have every right to feel, to be sad, to be angry, to be hurt. But you don't let those emotions take the driver's seat. You let them visit but not move in. You welcome them, listen to them, and then you let them go. That's what I call emotional mastery, the art of calm, conscious self-command. There's an MC. Once heard from a Japanese monk, a lion doesn't roar at every mosquito that flies by. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's power. It's the choice of someone who doesn't need to prove anything anymore. You can start today. Next time someone pushes your buttons, try counting to 10 before you respond. Next time sadness hits, write it down instead of dumping it on someone else. Next time you're triggered, ask yourself, what inside me is really reacting here? And above all, forgive yourself when you slip up. Because mastering your emotions isn't a finish line, it's a lifelong practice. Remember, you don't need to react to prove your worth. Calmness, restraint, awareness. These are the marks of someone who's truly grown. And when you learn to lead yourself, nothing and no one can drag you off the path you choose. Move with precision, not permission. I don't know where you are in your life right now. Maybe you're standing at a crossroads, waiting for a sign, a green light, someone to give you the nod, some cosmic message saying, okay, now you're allowed to begin. If that's you, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You don't need anyone's permission to become the best version of yourself. I once coached a young woman, bright, passionate, full of potential. But she kept asking me, do you think I'm good enough to start? Should I wait until I get certified? What if I fail? I looked at her and said, people won't wait until you're perfect to judge you. They'll judge you the moment you walk into the room. So walk in like you belong there. Have you ever found yourself waiting to be chosen, waiting to be hired, waiting to be loved, waiting for someone to give you a shot, waiting for the day you finally feel confident enough? I understand. I've been there too. But eventually I realized something. That kind of waiting is a cage you build around yourself. And the funny part is the key, it's been in your pocket the whole time. When you wait for permission, you're giving away your power. One of my former clients was an immigrant. He dreamed of opening his own auto repair shop in the US. But for 7 years, he did nothing. Why? Because he didn't have a degree. No mentor, no one cheering him on. Then one day his mother passed away, the person he'd always hoped to make proud first. He came to me and said, I kept waiting for her to see me succeed, but now I just wish I'd started sooner. That line stayed with me for a long time. You see, time doesn't wait for you to feel ready, it just keeps moving. Move with clarity, not emotion. Moving with precision doesn't mean being reckless. It doesn't mean just do it and hope for the best. It means knowing what you want clearly and not needing the whole world to agree before you take the first step. When a pilot prepares for takeoff, he doesn't go around asking every passenger if they're ready to fly. He checks the fuel, he checks the weather, he checks the runway, then he takes off. You're the same. You weren't born to sit around waiting for validation. You were born to decide. And once you decide, stop asking for permission. Just move. But what if I fail? I've heard that question hundreds of times, and I always say the same thing. You will fail, and that's part of the plan. I know it sounds backwards, but listen, people who move with clarity aren't afraid of mistakes. They learn, they adjust, they don't sit around waiting for perfect conditions. They don't wait for doors to open, they build their own. One of my favourite quotes is from Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I would add, no one can stop you from moving forward unless you decide to stop. Moving with clarity looks like this. Knowing your next step, even when no one's watching. Working in silence, not to prove yourself to others, but to prove something to yourself. Waking up early, not because of a deadline, but because you have direction. Saying no to what doesn't align, not from pride, but from purpose. And something amazing happens the moment you stop waiting for approval. The moment you say, I'm doing this because I believe in it. The world starts paying attention. You start attracting the right people. People on your frequency. People who don't need to be convinced because they feel your conviction. You no longer need applause. Your consistency becomes the applause. So today, I just want to ask you one question. How much longer will you wait? Until there's no one left to ask? Until time runs out? Or will you start now? Not with permission, but with clarity, confidence, and the heart of someone ready to rewrite their story. You don't need someone else to declare your worth. You are the proof. Don't move out of fear of being left behind. Move because you know exactly where you're headed. Turn every setback into strategy. I don't need to know how many times you have fallen. I only care about one thing. What did you do with the fall? Because in the end, failure is not the finish line. It's an invitation to begin again, this time sharper. I once sat down with a man who lost his job at 52. He had been a senior executive, then the company went under, his marriage collapsed, his life unravelled. I asked him, if you could go back to the day you lost your job, what would you do differently? He stared at me for a moment, then said, I wouldn't let myself spiral for so long. I would pivot faster instead of blaming life. You see, there's a big difference between someone who lets failure break them and someone who uses it to rebuild. Pain doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to wake you up. Maybe you got rejected from a job, maybe someone walked away, maybe that business you poured your heart into fell apart. But have you ever paused to ask, what is this failure trying to teach me? A single mum's story. She had dropped out of school and worked odd jobs to raise her kid. One day she opened a small shop. Then the pandemic hit and she lost everything. But instead of breaking down, she stayed up every night after putting her child to bed, learning online business. No one saw her studying, no one saw her cry. A year later, she relaunched, this time online. In her first month, her sales were 5 times higher than her old shop. I asked her, "What made you get back up?" She smiled and said, "I started treating failure like a map. If one path is blocked, I don't sit there and cry. I find a new one." Psychology confirms this. Humans grow the most through adversity. We build mental flexibility. We develop strategy. We strengthen resilience, not when life is smooth, but when everything falls apart. Failure isn't what you should fear. Missing the lesson inside it, that's the real loss. Some failures don't come to punish you, they come to redirect you. Like a bowstring pulled back, the tension is there for a reason, to launch you further. So when life pulls you backward, don't panic. You might be getting ready to fly. When things fall apart, don't just ask, "Why me?" Ask yourself, what inside me still needs strengthening? What warning signs did I miss? Am I living in alignment with my values? Because failure is the harshest teacher, but it's also the most honest. It doesn't show up to defeat you. It shows up to point out what needs to evolve. I once taught a life skills class for ex-inmates. One man told me, "I lost 7 years of my freedom, but I gained clarity. I know who I am now, and I never want to be that old version of me again." You see, a major failure is never as dangerous as the quiet repetition of small mistakes. When you start learning from failure, you don't just recover, you rebuild with strategy. An ordinary person gets knocked down by failure, but someone who's awake, someone who's done hiding, turns that failure into their new blueprint. Failure is not the end. It's the start of your next upgraded version. So, if you're at rock bottom right now, if you feel like you've lost it all, place your hand over your heart and say, "I'm not done. I'm just rebuilding." Every brick that fell, use it to build your new foundation. Every door that closed, ask yourself, was there another door I forgot to knock on? Believe me, nothing is wasted if you're willing to learn from it. And if you're ready, I'll continue with part 6, Learn Everything. Speak little. A powerful lesson about how the most powerful people in the room aren't the ones who talk the most, but the ones who know the most and choose when to speak. Learn everything. Speak little, because real power doesn't shout, it listens first. There's something I've learned after years of working with both the highly successful and those who've hit rock bottom. The more someone knows, the less they feel the need to talk. And it's not because they don't have anything to say, it's because they understand words like time and energy are valuable assets. You don't just throw them around. I remember this student I used to mentor, 25 years old, smart, full of passion. In every meeting, he was the first to speak. He always had something to say, always trying to show that he got it. One day after a team meeting, I pulled him aside and asked, "Did you notice that the quietest person in the room just got invited to lunch with the boss?" He blinked, confused. I smiled and said, "Sometimes silence at the right moment makes people more curious, more respectful than any speech ever could." Learning is a lifetime journey. Speaking should be a strategic act. We live in a culture that confuses loud with strong, that assumes value comes from being the most vocal, the fastest to respond, the one always on. But here's the truth. The people who truly move others speak less, because when they do speak, the room listens. But that kind of weight behind your words only comes from something deeper, learning before speaking. One of my past clients used to be a boxing coach. He once told me, "The best fighter isn't the one who throws the most punches, it's the one who observes the most. His punches are few, but everyone lands with purpose." I think it's the same with words. Someone once asked me, "How can I get people to listen to me more?" And I said, "Say less." It sounds backward, I know. But this is the truth of deep influence, not just noise. Every word you speak should be like an arrow, not meant to hurt, but meant to hit with precision. Your words should have weight. They should come from clarity, not impulse, from observation, not reaction, from inner wisdom, not outer pressure. Silence isn't weakness, it's the strategy of the one who's watching everything. When you speak less, you hear more. Notice what others miss. Have space to ask, do I really need to say this? To whom? And why now? We live in a world drowning in noise. Those who listen well, they see what others overlook. I once attended a round table with a legendary investor. For the first 45 minutes, he said absolutely nothing. He just listened, took notes, watched. Some people thought he wasn't engaged, but when he finally spoke just a few sentences, the whole room went silent. Because every word he said was something no one else had thought of. That's the silence of someone who has seen life, someone who's learnt more than they've performed. And that is where real power comes from. One of the core principles I teach my students, speaking less doesn't mean your voice is weak. It means your voice has weight. Let people feel your presence before they ever hear your voice. Let your quiet observation become your advantage. Let your silent preparation become the backbone of everything you say. And if you're worried, but if I stay quiet, how will anyone notice me? Let me remind you of this. Silence, when timed right, makes the world lean in. You don't need to shout to be seen. You need to know deeply, understand clearly. And when you speak, speak so simply and clearly. It touches people's hearts. So, if you ever find yourself caught in that pressure to say something, to respond quickly, to prove you belong, I invite you to step back. Listen more. Watch deeper. Study every single day like you know nothing yet. Because that, more than anything, you say makes you dangerous in the best way. And then, when you've truly learned enough, when you're ready, you'll only need to say it once, and it'll be enough to change the game. Would you like me to continue with part 8? Build inner legacy, not just outer success. It's going to be a beautiful reflection. A reminder that real success isn't just what the world sees. It's who you quietly become when no one's watching. Learn everything. Speak little. Because real power doesn't shout. It listens first. There's something I've learned after years of working with both the highly successful and those who've hit rock bottom. The more someone knows, the less they feel the need to talk. And it's not because they don't have anything to say. It's because they understand words like time and energy are valuable assets. You don't just throw them around. I remember this student I used to mentor, 25 years old, smart, full of passion. In every meeting, he was the first to speak. He always had something to say, always trying to show that he got it. One day, after a team meeting, I pulled him aside and asked, "Did you notice that the quietest person in the room just got invited to lunch with the boss?" He blinked, confused. I smiled and said, "Sometimes silence at the right moment makes people more curious, more respectful than any speech ever could." Learning is a lifetime journey. Speaking should be a strategic act. We live in a culture that confuses loud with strong, that assumes value comes from being the most vocal, the fastest to respond, the one always on. But here's the truth. The people who truly move others speak less. Because when they do speak, the room listens. But that kind of weight behind your words only comes from something deeper. Learning before speaking. One of my past clients used to be a boxing coach. He once told me, the best fighter isn't the one who throws the most punches, it's the one who observes the most. His punches are few, but everyone lands with purpose. I think it's the same with words. Someone once asked me, how can I get people to listen to me more? And I said, say less. It sounds backward, I know, but this is the truth of deep influence, not just noise. Every word you speak should be like an arrow, not meant to hurt, but meant to hit with precision. Your words should have weight. They should come from clarity, not impulse, from observation, not reaction, from inner wisdom, not outer pressure. Silence isn't weakness. It's the strategy of the one who's watching everything. When you speak less, you hear more. Notice what others miss. Have space to ask, Do I really need to say this? To whom and why now? We live in a world drowning in noise. Those who listen well, they see what others overlook. I once attended a roundtable with a legendary investor. For the first 45 minutes, he said absolutely nothing. He just listened, took notes, watched. Some people thought he wasn't engaged, but when he finally spoke just a few sentences, the whole room went silent. Because every word he said was something no one else had thought of. That's the silence of someone who has seen life, someone who's learnt more than they've performed. And that is where real power comes from. One of the core principles I teach my students, speaking less doesn't mean your voice is weak. It means your voice has weight. Let people feel your presence before they ever hear your voice. Let your quiet observation become your advantage. Let your silent preparation become the backbone of everything you say. And if you're worried, but if I stay quiet, how will anyone notice me? Let me remind you of this. Silence, when timed right, makes the world lean in. You don't need to shout to be seen. You need to know deeply, understand clearly. And when you speak so simply and clearly, it touches people's hearts. So if you ever find yourself caught in that pressure to say something, to respond quickly, to prove you belong, I invite you to step back, listen more, watch deeper, study every single day like you know nothing yet. Because that more than anything you say makes you dangerous in the best way. And then when you've truly learned enough, when you're ready, you'll only need to say it once, and it'll be enough to change the game. Build inner legacy, not just outer success. The kind of success they can't see but will always feel. I often ask this question to people who seem to have it all. Money, status, recognition. And I ask them, if you disappeared tomorrow, what do you want people to remember about you? You know what? None of them say, I want them to remember how much money I made, or how many followers I had, or the size of my house. No. Most of them whisper something like, I hope my kids remember that I showed up for them. I hope I was kind. I hope I helped someone when they thought they couldn't go on. Real success isn't about what you collect. It's about what you leave behind in people. Not cars, not titles, not applause, but impact, presence, character. The kind of things no one can take away. The kind of things that live inside others long after you've left the room. I once spoke to a man who was homeless, but he had the eyes of someone deeply grounded. We talked. He used to be an engineer, then life happened. He lost his job, then his house, then nearly everything. I asked him, how are you still so calm? He smiled and said, because I still have something no one can steal, my lessons, my resilience and my kindness. I may not be rich in the way people expect, but I'm not empty. That moment stuck with me. In a world obsessed with performance, the ones who build inner legacy may look slow, but they're the ones who last the longest. Because when the applause fades, when the spotlight dims, it's your stillness, your wisdom, your character that carry you forward and that others carry in their hearts. Outer success makes people know you. Inner legacy makes them remember you. The question isn't, what do I have? It's who am I becoming? What kind of person am I behind the achievements? I had a friend who's an oncology doctor. She once said to me, I've sat beside people in their final hours and not one of them ever said, I wish I worked more overtime. They always say, I wish I had been more present, loved deeper, forgiven sooner. That truth never left me. So how do you build inner legacy? You don't need to start with anything big. You just need to start choosing to be honest, even when no one's watching, to show up even when it's hard, to help someone, even if no one claps, to stay kind, even when life isn't. Because every small act repeated daily becomes the bricks of a person you'll be proud to live as. And if someone's watching you right now, a child, a friend, or maybe your future self, ask yourself, what do I want them to see? A person chasing every spotlight, or a person anchored in something deeper? The world may forget your resume, but the people you loved, supported and inspired, they won't. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. That's the kind of success that lasts. So today, ask yourself, does What am I building inside of me? Not just what am I doing out there, because at the end of it all, it's not about how high you climbed, it's about who you were while climbing. Success may fade, but inner legacy, that lives on in people, in memories, in the quiet impact no one saw coming but everyone felt. You've made it through all 8 rules of owning the game of life.